Okay, in this video we're going to be talking about solving various types of equations or algebra equations. And let me just encourage you as we're working through this video, if there's ever a time that you need to pause the video to work on a problem, please feel free to do so. So let's get started. The very first problem that we have is we have 26 equals 8 plus v. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little line through my equal sign. And this just is something that I like to show students when they're having trouble with algebra, that this is like the line that separates the right-hand side of the equation away from the left-hand side of the equation. And it also kind of symbolizes that as that great boundary of if you ever take anything to the other side of the equation, then it's going to be the opposite. So see how this is a positive 8? If I was going to move this 8 over to the other side, I would have to subtract 8, okay? Because it always is opposite when you go across the equation sign or equal sign, okay? Now, another thing I want to bring to your attention is the fact that we have three things going on. We have a 26 in the problem, we have an 8 in the problem, and then we also have a v in the problem. Now, the v actually has a number in front of it. It's an unseen and understood 1. So the number that we're dealing with is 26, 8, and 1. Now there's something special about this 1 in the fact that they have a letter attached to it. Notice that the 26 and 8 do not have letters. So when we are trying to combine like terms, meaning take numbers and add them or subtract them together, or maybe even divide or multiply, we always have to deal with letters or numbers that have no letters attached to them. So like this 26 and this 8, I can group these together, okay? But I won't be able to group this together because it has a letter attached to it. So let's go ahead and get started with problem number 1. I have a 26, I have an 8, and I have a v. The v, or the variable, is over on the right-hand side. So it would be easier to take the 8 and move it over to the left-hand side. So I'm going to subtract 8 and subtract 8. And when I do that, I get 18 is equal to v. And then I'm done. And of course you would check your work, but we're pretty much done at this point. All right, let's look at problem number 2. We have 3 plus p equals 8. Once again, this p has an understood 1 in front of it. And remember the little boundary line that we do. And of course, as you get more used to or more accustomed to this, you don't have to put the little boundary line. But anyway, we have a 3, we have a 1p, and we have an 8. Well, I know that the 3 and the 8 are like terms, so I'm going to combine them together. Now, notice that the variable is on the left-hand side, so I'm going to take this 3 and I'm going to throw it over to the right-hand side. Now, this 3 is a positive 3, so when I go to the other side of the equal sign, I'm going to subtract. And I subtract, and I get p is equal to 5. Okay? Let's go down to number 4. All right, let's try number 4 for a second. Number 4 is very similar. Once again, we're going to put our little dividing line here just to kind of symbolize it of the left and right hand side. We have a 15, a negative 15, we have an understood 1 in, and then we have a negative 9. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this negative 15 and throw it over to the right-hand side. But notice when it goes to the other side, it goes positive. So I'm going to add 15, and I'm going to add 15, and then I'm going to go ahead and solve. N is equal to 6. Now you might be asking, why am I adding 15? Well, because you have to add the same amount which would cancel it out. That negative 15, that positive 15, when you add it together, it cancels it out. It's gone. All right? Let's see if we can find some more. All right, here's one. You have 11. Problem number 11. You have negative 104 is equal to 8x. Now, we're at a point here where the 104 and the 8x, they've been separated by the equal sign, but either way, they could not be added or subtracted together. But we still need to solve for x. X still needs to be solved for. But here's what I want to make sure that you remember, and I'm sure you do from your middle school years. Whenever you have a number and a letter together, in order to separate them, you have to divide. Okay? And so you would take 104 and divide it by 8. Because when you divide it by 8 on the right-hand side, it cancels it out. So negative 104 divided by 8 is 13. So x is equal to 13. And I actually moved it. Let me read. And of course you would check your, actually it's negative 13 because that's negative 104. Let's try number 12. Number 12, the same thing. We have a number and a letter together that they need to be separated. And when we do that, we have to divide. So I'm going to divide by 14, which cancels that 14 out. And when I divide negative 56 by, I put a positive, a negative there, let me redo that, by 14, you would get negative 4. So B is equal to negative 4. All right, let's look at problem number 13 for a second. Problem number 13, what you have is you have negative 6 is equal to B over 18. Well, if something is ever a fraction, fraction is another way of saying divide. So if I was going to do the exact opposite, meaning if I was going to take this 18 and get it away from the B, I would have to multiply. The exact opposite. So I would multiply 18 on this side to cancel it out, and then I'd multiply negative 6 times 18 on the left-hand side, and I would get negative 108. And there's my answer. So let's see if there's anything else I can use as a good example of this. Okay, same thing here. Look at problem number 15. You have a variable being divided by a number. So in order to get that 8 out of there, in order to get rid of that 8, we'd have to do the exact opposite, which would mean multiply by 8. So in this case, V is equal to 16. Now, as I am scrolling down this page, if you would like to pause them and actually try and attempt it, feel free to do so. And spoiler alert, here's all the answers to the problems that we just did. So if you answered some, or if you tried some of these, here are the answers. And remember, as I'm going through it, just pause the video and just check your work. All right. So we got all those right, hopefully. Let's go to another one. All right. A little more difficult, but you can handle it. Let's zoom this in a little bit so everybody can see. One more time. Okay. Problems number 1 through 4 you can see. All right. What we have here is negative 20 is equal to negative 4x minus 6x. So when we're dealing with a situation like this, notice that we have two numbers that have x's attached to them. Well, that makes it like terms, meaning they are the same, which means we can combine them. So when we combine them, notice that this is my boundary line, so to speak. So everything has to be, or everything that I'm combining that doesn't have to go across the boundary line will stay the same sign. So we have negative 4x minus 6x, which when we do the math, we get negative 10x. And of course we have negative 20. So we have negative 20 is equal to negative 10x, and by now you should know that you'll be dividing by negative 10, and when you do so, you would get x is equal to 2. And also please remember to always check your work. Okay. Let's look at problem number 3. See how we have an 8x and see how we have a 7x? They're on the opposite side of the equal sign. There's my boundary line again. So that means I have to take either the 8x, move it over to the right-hand side, or I have to take the 7x and move it over to the left-hand side. Well, I'm going to choose to move the 7x over to the left-hand side. And I had to erase that to give myself more room. So when I do that, that's a positive 7x minus 7x minus 7x. Well, 8 minus 7 would give me x minus 2 is equal to negative 9. Now, also another thing that I want you to notice is that I'm writing everything kind of in line. And the reason I'm doing that is because it keeps all my information organized. Now, I'm going to scratch out problem number 5 for a second just because I ran out of room. And we're going to keep solving problem number 3. Now we have x minus 2 equals negative 9. Well, at this point, you should know this is a pretty simple problem at this point. We're going to take this negative 2 and we're going to move it over to the right-hand side of the problem. And when we do that, we're going to add 2. We're going to add 2. Because when we add 2, of course, that cancels out. And so our answer is x is equal to negative 7. Let's try number 6. That looks difficult or challenging. And I'm going to write my information, okay, right up under it. I can work around it. We have p minus 1 equals 5p plus 3p. Now, I circled these because they're like terms. So I need to combine the 1, the 5, and the 3. But notice that the 5 and the 3 are on the same side as the equal sign. And just in case you can't see, that's dividing them. This is the same side as the equal sign, and that will be 8p minus 8 on the right-hand side, and then p minus 1 on the left-hand side. So now we have this p right here, which I put a dot on there, and 8p, which is there. We've got to get those together. Now remember that there is an unseen 1 in front of the p. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 1p and move it over to the right-hand side. And when I do that, I'm going to do the exact opposite and subtract p. Subtract p from one side. And okay, I was going to do things in more than just one step, but I'm not going to. So my next one is negative 1 is equal to 7p minus 8. So from here, notice that nothing else has a p attached to it, but this negative 1 and this negative 8 does. So in order to get p all by itself, I'm going to take the negative 8 and just move it over here. So when I do that, I'm going to add 8. I'm going to add 8. That cancels. And I get 7 is equal to 7p. Now from this point, it should be pretty simple. You're going to divide by 7, and p is equal to 1. Okay? Now, as I'm working through this video, if you happen to see something that you would like to try, feel free to do so. Let's scroll down to see if we can find anything else. Oh, number 9 looks good. I'm going to scratch out number 11 because I might need room to write there. So this will just be extra scratch work for me. So what we have here is negative 8 is equal to negative parenthesis x plus 4. Now, x plus 4 cannot be combined because this x is, or there's a 1 attached to the x, and this 4 has nothing attached to it. But we need to get this negative sign away. Now, this negative sign actually kind of acts like a negative 1. So when we distribute negative 1 in there, it becomes negative 8 is equal to negative x minus 4. Well, we have a negative 8 over here. We have a negative 4 over here. I'm going to take this negative 4 on this side, which means I'll be adding 4. So my next step is I'm going to write it where number 11 would be. Negative 4 is equal to negative x. Now you're not done. See this negative sign here? That's actually a negative 1. So what you're going to do is you're going to have to divide by that negative 1 to get that out of here. And when you do that, you get 4 is equal to x. Let's try number 10. Number 10, you have 12 is equal to negative 4 times negative 6x minus 3. Well, there's nothing you can do to this 12 right now. It's stuck. But you have to deal with the parentheses first. So I'm going to take this negative 4 and multiply it in here. You get 12 is equal to positive 24x plus 12. And then I'm going to take this positive 12 and I'm going to move it over to the left-hand side. Minus 12 and minus 12. Well, that cancels out. But notice, this also kind of cancels out. But you don't leave it But this doesn't disappear, okay? It doesn't disappear. It actually, 12 minus 12 equals 0, equals 24x. So when you divide by 24, x equals 0. So, as we're working along, if you happen to see, or as I scroll down the page, if you happen to see a problem that you would like to try at home, feel free to do so. So I'm scrolling down, and feel free to pause the video so you can actually work on it. Let's see. Number 15 looks good, but it looks like it's going to take some room, so I'm going to see if I can make some room for this problem. Okay, problem number 15 looks good. And in order to do problem number 15, I'm going to have to scratch out problem number 17. Let's see, let me look at problem number 17 for a second. Actually, I like problem number 17 better. So we're going to try problem number 17. Let me scratch out 19 because I'm sure I'm going to need the room to work. All right, first thing I got to do is deal with these parentheses. See that negative sign? I got to distribute it in. So when I do that, I get negative 1 minus 7x. See this negative 6 out here? I have to distribute it. Plus 42 plus 6x is equal to 36. Now when I combine like terms, remember you combine terms based upon the fact that if they have an x or a variable or no variable or the same variable. So I'm just going to go ahead and combine the negative 1 and the positive 42. So when I do that, I get negative 7x plus 41 plus 6x equals 36. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this 41 and I'm going to bring it over to the right-hand side. So when I do that, I'm going to subtract 41, which I'm running out of room here, and I get negative 7x plus 6x is equal to negative 5. I'm going to combine these like terms because they both have variables attached to them. So when I do that, I get negative x is equal to negative 5. And then when I divide by negative 1, because I can't leave my x negative, I get x is equal to positive 5. So there's your answer. Number 20 looks good, but we're going to go ahead and stop here. But if you'd like to work on number 20, feel free to pause the video and do so. Also, as you're checking your work, here are the answers to all the problems. Now, I didn't really check my work, which I should have, so shame on me, but I couldn't make this into a 40-minute video. So anyway, please check your work as I'm scrolling down here. And if you have any questions, please let me know the next time you see me. Thank you.